The digital chime felt like a physical blow. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. My eyes snapped open, fighting the residual haze of a Sunday morning sleep-in. The clock beside my bed showed 8:17 a.m. My cozy two-bedroom condo in Seattle's Fremont district, the one I'd poured 8 years of my life and every spare cent into, was bathed in the gray, slanting light of a typical Pacific Northwest morning. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. There it was again, electronic and insistent. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. Someone was at my door, and they were using the wrong code. I knew who it was. The moment the pounding started, not polite knocking, but a frantic, aggressive slamming that rattled the framed art on the wall, I knew. "Chloe, open up, this is ridiculous." The voice belonged to Kyle, my younger brother. He sounded indignant, like I was the one causing the problem. I slid out of bed, the hardwood floor solid and cold beneath my bare feet. My heart was already pounding against my ribs, a drumbeat of dread. Just last night, I had finally done it. After nearly a decade of my family treating this condo like a revolving door, a community asset they could walk into whenever they wanted a clean couch or a free meal, I had deleted their access codes from my smart lock. One small, utterly necessary act of self-preservation. "Chloe, open this door right now. Do you know what you've done?" That was Carol, my mother. Her voice, usually perfectly modulated for her high-end retail boutique customers, was shrill and laced with fury. "Open up, young lady, or Robert is calling the locksmith." My father, Robert, was silent, which was almost worse. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking, but I forced my fingers to swipe open the camera. I hit record. Evidence. Protection. The cold, logical part of my coder brain took over, demanding documentation. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me out of this moment. I crossed the short distance to the door, my mind running a subroutine. Delay, verify, protect. I slid the heavy security chain into place before unlocking the deadbolt. I opened the door just a crack, holding the phone up, the red recording light glaring. Kyle stumbled back, his fist suspended midair, ready for another assault on the wood. Behind him stood Carol, dressed impeccably even for a Sunday morning attack in a cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored slacks. She was clutching a thick, official-looking manila envelope to her chest like a shield. My father hovered near the elevator bank, avoiding my eyes. "What are you doing here?" My voice was a choked whisper, barely audible over the thumping in my chest. Carol scoffed, a familiar gesture of supreme irritation. "Stop this theater, Chloe. We're here because your brother needs you to sign these papers, and you are being juvenile. You changed the code, darling. Seriously?" She shook the envelope. "We need to get this finalized." I stared at the three of them, and the memory of the previous night slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave. My father's retirement dinner. A slightly too expensive Italian restaurant downtown. The toasts. Carol had raised her glass, the low chandelier light catching the cut crystal. "To Kyle, and to the launch of his new digital agency, fully funded now that we've secured the asset he needs." The whole table, my aunt, my cousins, had gone silent. I'd looked up from my pasta, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "The asset?" Carol had just laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound. "The condo, silly. We always knew this place was just temporary until he had the capital. You've been paying the mortgage, keeping it in shape. You've done your part." And everyone had laughed. They had all laughed, my father, my Aunt Eleanor, even Kyle, who had the audacity to wink at me. The condo I bought 8 years ago, with my first substantial contract money. The condo where every single payment had come from my bank account. The condo that was supposed to be my launch pad for my own VC-backed software firm. Now they were here, expecting me to sign it away. No. The word fell from my lips, quiet but firm. A single bite of code that changed everything. Kyle's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "What the hell do you mean, no? This is the family's investment. Mom and Dad co-signed 8 years ago, remember?" Something shifted inside me. The fear dissolved, replaced by a cold, searing certainty. I pushed the door open just enough to put my body in the gap, and I straightened my spine. I mean, no, you can't come in. And this is not the family's investment. It's mine. I slammed the door shut. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy thunk, followed by the electronic lock's confirmation. Locking successful. Welcome home, Chloe. I turned and strode to my desk. I grabbed the stack of documents I had frantically pulled out after that disastrous dinner. The original deed, the mortgage statements, every tax document showing my solo payments. I faced the door again, holding them up. The deed, 8 years of canceled checks and bank transfers, all bearing one name, Chloe Jensen. This, I announced to the closed door, my voice shaking but clear, is my house. The sound from the other side was a collective gasp, followed by an explosion of sound. Carol's scream was a pitch I hadn't heard since I broke her favorite vase at age 10. "You ungrateful child! You will regret this!" Kyle started pounding again, harder this time, rattling the frame until the very walls felt unstable. My father's lower tones rumbled between them, trying to calm the chaos. I leaned my back against the door, phone still recording, and slid to the floor. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The papers scattered round me like fallen leaves of betrayal. Outside, the family continued their assault. But inside, in my condo, my domain, I had finally stood my ground. The first sob punched out of me, raw and unexpected. It wasn't the sound of sorrow, but the violent release of 8 years of sacrifice and compliance. 8 years of putting off my dream of building my own tech firm to keep up the mortgage, to help the family investment, all while they secretly plotted to steal the title. I curled forward, forehead against my knees, and let the grief and the white-hot anger wash over me. An hour passed before the hallway went silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the building's infrastructure. I pushed myself up, wiping the mascara streaks from my cheeks. Coffee. I needed to reset. I walked to the kitchen, the simple, mundane act of grinding beans a grounding ritual. My phone buzzed on the counter. An email notification. First Pacific Bank and Trust. Subject, re-reverse mortgage application. Appraisal confirmation. My mug clattered against the counter but didn't break. I snatched the phone, my breath catching in my throat as I scanned the message. Dear Ms. Jensen, this email is to confirm your appointment with our appraiser, Mr. Fields, for this coming Tuesday at 10 a.m. A reverse mortgage. A loan that allows homeowners, usually 62 or older, to borrow against the equity in their home. A loan I absolutely, positively never applied for. My stomach plummeted. With clumsy, rapid movements, I navigated to my credit monitoring app. I scrolled through recent inquiries, the sound of my pulse thundering in my ears. There it was. A hard inquiry from First Pacific Bank and Trust, dated 2 weeks ago. My phone, however, remained unnervingly silent all afternoon and evening. By midnight, I had almost convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, they had realized the gravity of the situation and retreated. I was wrong. Monday morning, the original day of the canceled appraisal, dawned with a noise so jarring it didn't just wake me, it launched me out of bed. The pounding was back, more violent than before, shaking the very framework of my condo. "Chloe, you answer that door right now!" Carol's voice was pure venom, stripped of her usual retail facade, sharp-edged and desperate. I pulled on a robe, adrenaline surging, and approached the door cautiously. I kept the security chain latched and peered through the crack. Carol stood alone, her usually impeccable blonde hair slightly mussed. She gripped a sleek leather portfolio. "The appraiser is coming today, you spoiled brat." She spat, the words rushing out. "Kyle needs you to sign these papers, and you are going to give him what he needs before you destroy his future." Her lie landed flat between us. She was still operating on the assumption that I was ignorant. "There is no appraisal, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I canceled it when I reported your fraud." The color drained from her face faster than I'd ever seen. For 3 heartbeats, the only sound was the building's HVAC system. Then her features contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated outrage. "You did what? Do you have any idea the mess you've made? You've ruined everything.
We had to pull favors just to get the application processed quickly." She slammed her palm against the doorframe, the sound echoing down the deserted hall. "You're a woman, Chloe. You'll get married and move into a house with a yard eventually. Stop being selfish and hoarding an asset your brother needs to launch his career." Her words, the ones that used to cut me to the bone, now just bounced off the armor of my certainty. "You taught me a valuable lesson, Mom," I told her through the narrow opening. "You taught me that family only matters when they need something from me. Lesson learned." I closed the door as she launched into a fresh, high-pitched tirade. Her voice followed me into the kitchen, but now it sounded distant, irrelevant, like background noise from a bad sitcom. An hour later, my phone pinged, a notification from Upwork. Kyle had posted a blistering update. "Betrayed by my own flesh and blood. Some people are so bitter about their own stalled careers that they'd rather see their family fail than do the right thing and share the assets they were given." It had 8 immediate reactions and a few sympathetic comments. I took a screenshot, filing it neatly in a new folder on my desktop labeled Evidence Jensen vs. Family. Tuesday brought a fresh, calculated assault. My phone blew up with alerts from Upwork and GitHub. Someone named Jay Thompson had left a 1-star review on my Upwork profile. "Unreliable contractor, deceitful, seems mentally unstable." 5 minutes later, another appeared on a private project repository on GitHub, using different language but the same biting tone. I recognized Carol's famous and most cutting phrases immediately. They had shifted from emotional and physical harassment to a direct attack on my livelihood. Instead of panic, a cold, hard clarity filled me. They were escalating. I immediately called Aunt Eleanor, my father's sister, and the only relative who had ever openly questioned Carol's manipulative tactics. "Aunt Eleanor, I need to talk to you. I need you to know the truth." I explained everything: the dinner, the locked door, the fraudulent reverse mortgage application, and finally, the fake professional reviews targeting my coding business. "Those absolute vultures," Eleanor hissed over the phone, the retired nurse's protective instincts flaring. "Honey, this isn't family drama anymore. This is criminal. This is malice." "I know, Aunt E. I'm sending you an email right now. I just need someone else to have copies of everything. A digital backup, just in case." "Send it all, Chloe," she said, her voice firm. "Every last piece. Your mother is doing more than just being difficult. Using your information to steal equity? That's a felony, plain and simple." After hanging up, I compiled the evidence: the mortgage statements, the bank's fraud report, the screenshots of Kyle's LinkedIn rant and the 1-star professional attacks, and the recording from Sunday morning. Sending it to Eleanor felt like building a first line of defense, brick by digital brick. Another ping, a text from Marcus, my neighbor upstairs, an architect I occasionally shared an elevator with. "Your mom was back this morning. Sounded worse than Sunday. Just an FYI, my hallway security cam caught the audio from the elevator bank." I texted back immediately. "Can you save that footage?" His reply was instantaneous. "Already done. Safe on a separate drive." Another unexpected ally, another layer of protection. The week dragged on. The 1-star reviews were working. I lost a promising contract for a large custom data migration. The client, Mr. Davies, was apologetic but awkward. "Chloe, we heard you might be having personal issues. My HR team saw the Upwork comments about instability. We think we need to go in a safer direction." The despair was almost overwhelming. I sat at my desk, surrounded by the project diagrams that would now never be executed, and allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. But when the tears stopped, the cold anger remained. My phone vibrated with a text. It was from my father, Robert. It was the first time he'd reached out since he stood silently by the elevator on Sunday. "Family meeting. My house. Tonight. Attendance mandatory." I stared at the text. My house. Not our house. Mandatory. Like a summons. This had Carol's influence written all over it. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the nearest print shop. If they wanted a meeting, I'd give them one, but it would be on my terms, with my evidence, and with a voice they wouldn't expect. They thought they knew me. Quiet Chloe. the one who gave up the major VC funding opportunity to stay and handle the mortgage, the one who never fought back. They had no idea who I had become since I changed that door code. I was preparing for a presentation, and they were the audience.
The house looked smaller, less imposing than the fortress I remembered from my childhood. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, before forcing my fingers to relax. "You are not the same person who sat silent at that dinner table," I whispered to myself. I gathered the binders and walked up the cracked concrete path. Through the front window, I could see them, Carol, Robert, and Kyle, positioned around the dining room table, a tribunal waiting for a defendant. The oak table, polished to a sickening shine, reflected the chandelier light. My mother always polishes the furniture before an ambush. I didn't knock. I still had a key. This was probably the last time I'd ever use it. They looked up in unison when I entered. My father, Robert, sat at the head, looking stern, his reading glasses perched on his nose, hands folded. Carol was on his right, her posture rigid, her expensive silk blouse buttoned high despite the heat. Kyle slouched on the left, already glued to his phone, occasionally glancing up with a look of bored entitlement. "You're late," Carol announced before I'd fully closed the door. "I'm actually 3 minutes early, Mom, but I appreciate the immediate effort to control the narrative." I didn't wait for a response. I walked directly to the table, my steps deliberate, slow, and utterly without apology. Robert cleared his throat, pulling off his reading glasses. "Chloe, this has gone too far," he said, his voice heavy with the paternal authority he reserved for mandatory family meetings. "You're embarrassing this family. You canceled the loan. You upset your mother. We are here to fix this." He gestured to a stack of papers at his elbow, Kyle's paperwork, no doubt. "You will sign these papers, and we will forget this entire ugly episode." The old Chloe would have wilted. She would have signed anything to make the tension evaporate, to restore the precarious peace that defined our home life. But the old Chloe was gone, suffocated by the stench of betrayal. I placed a binder in front of each of them, black, professional, identical except for the names I'd printed on the spine in stark white labels. "What is this?" Robert murmured, his annoyance palpable. "It's my answer," I said. Carol, ever the quickest to attack, flipped hers open first. Her eyes instantly locked onto the copy of the reverse mortgage email I'd placed on the first page, the bank's letterhead a crisp, damning piece of evidence. The color rushed from her face. She snapped the binder shut instantly. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her voice low and dangerously controlled. Kyle opened his more cautiously, like it might contain a spring trap. He found the section tabbed with his name, printouts of his public betrayal on LinkedIn, followed immediately by the 1-star, career-destroying reviews left on my Upwork and GitHub. The reviews used his signature phrases, deceitful and mentally unstable, in the exact sequences he tended to deploy them when angry. His skin turned an ashen gray, his Adam's apple bobbing as he choked on nothing. Only Robert, my father, actually read. He started with the deed, his finger tracing my sole signature. He flipped through the 8 years of bank statements showing my recurring payments. His brow furrowed in genuine confusion as he turned to the page showing the hard credit inquiry from First Pacific Bank, dated 2 weeks before his retirement dinner. "What is this?" he whispered, more a question to the room than to me. "That's evidence of identity theft," I stated, my own voice unnaturally calm. "Someone used my personal details to apply for a large loan on my property without my consent." Robert looked up sharply. "But who would—" He stopped, his eyes sliding sideways to Carol. The dawning comprehension was slow, painful, and shattering. "Carol!" he breathed, turning to my mother with a horror that was undeniably real. "You used her social security number?" The room fell absolutely silent. My mother didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She simply burst into furious, accusatory tears. "He's your son, Robert. We were going to lose everything." The phrase hung in the air. We were going to lose everything. Robert just stared at her, mouth slightly ajar. Kyle couldn't lift his head.
He was mesmerized by the oak grain. The united front they had prepared was dissolving into wreckage. "That's not true," I corrected, looking directly at Robert. "You were never going to lose anything because you never put in $1. I'm the one who lost. I lost my chance at VC seed funding. I lost 8 years of my life believing I wasn't good enough, all while I was paying your mortgage." Robert flinched, the truth landing like a physical punch. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to inform you. The reverse mortgage is dead. The bank has flagged Carol's contact number. Aunt Eleanor has a copy of this entire binder, and so does my neighbor Marcus, who has video footage of your harassment at my door." I stood taller, drawing power from the cold, clear facts. If one more one-star review appears, if any of you text me, email me, or come within 100 feet of my home, I am filing a police report for identity theft and harassment. Carol's face crumpled. "You ungrateful little—" My father finally broke his silence. He looked at Carol, then down at the binder, then back at me, a profound weariness settling over him. He did not speak. "We're done," I said. I turned and walked to the door, my back straighter than it had ever been. Behind me, I heard Carol's desperate, high-pitched plea. "Robert, tell her she has to—" Robert didn't say a word. I closed the door softly behind me. Outside, the Seattle evening air was damp and cool. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with freedom. I left the binders, the smoking ruins of their scheme, on the dining room table, and I drove away, never looking in the rearview mirror. 3 months later, I sat motionless at my desk. The only moving thing was the blinking cursor on my screen. My freelance coding profile, the one I'd built over 8 grinding years, now displayed a sickening number, 1.5, a complete nosedive from the consistent 4.9. I scrolled past the comments. Unreliable, unprofessional, mentally unstable, canceled projects at the last minute.
Every anonymous hit echoed Carol's spite and Kyle's malice. God, how I'd fought them. I sent the platforms copies of the bank fraud report, the hallway video footage, and screenshots of Kyle's rants. The response from Upwork and GitHub was a soulless, automated email. "We have reviewed your complaint and found these reviews do not violate our community policy." My phone rang. Gary Thompson, venture capitalist. My heart sank, knowing what was coming. Gary was the VC lead for the Seattle Tech Incubator, where I was seeking seed funding. I took a breath, forcing my voice steady. "This is Chloe?" "Chloe, hi. I'll be direct." Gary's voice was too kind, too smooth. "We're going to have to pause the seed funding contract for your platform idea." I closed my eyes. "I understand." He sighed. "It's not the pitch, Chloe. Your code and concept are excellent, but the partners saw the reviews. They see words like unstable, and they think liability. Our investors are nervous about public controversy." I understood. What else could I say? That my mother did it? The VC funding, the opportunity I'd sacrificed my early 20s for, was gone. Kyle's fake digital marketing agency, the one that had been entirely dependent on that fraudulent reverse mortgage, had collapsed before its launch. I had won the battle for the house, but my career was following his into the grave. I slammed my laptop shut and walked to the window, staring at the gray Seattle skyline. 8 years. I fought my own blood to keep this view. And now I had the house, but I was losing the career that paid for it. Sometimes winning felt exactly like losing. A single, hot tear of pure rage, not sadness, slid down my cheek. I wiped it away fiercely. "No," I said out loud in the empty room, "she doesn't win. He doesn't win." I looked at my hands, the hands that had written thousands of lines of code, the hands that built my business from nothing but talent and blind determination. The reputation was damaged, but the talent was still here. I could rebuild it. I walked back to my desk, ignored the 1.5-star profile, and opened the code repository for my personal submission to the city's Future Founders Grant program. They could attack my reputation, but they couldn't attack my work. 5 months after I firmly claimed my condo, the sunshine streamed through freshly washed windows. The air felt lighter. Green things were growing. New shoots on my succulents, fresh basil in the kitchen. My phone pinged. An email. City of Seattle Future Founders Grant. I read it 3 times. Congratulations, Miss Jensen. We are pleased to inform you that your application has been accepted. The email invited me to speak at their spring summit. The road back had been painful, but I had refused to die. I told every new contact, my business is under a personal smear campaign. Judge me only on my work. The ones who stayed saw the code spoke louder than internet vitriol. Later that week, I stood at the edge of the conference stage, waiting for my introduction. My heart hammered, but it was the clean fear of anticipation. Please welcome Seattle-based software consultant and entrepreneur Chloe Jensen. As I stepped into the spotlight, I saw them, Carol and Robert, standing near the exit. They looked smaller, defeated. Robert approached hesitantly. "You did good, kid," he said, the old nickname landing awkwardly. Carol searched my eyes, no longer just skimming for what she wanted. "Can we start over?" Her voice was stripped of its cutting edge. "Maybe," I told them, my voice steady, "when starting over isn't just about you losing control of me." I smiled politely, turned, and walked toward the other founders who were waving me over. Behind me, my parents stood alone. Freedom wasn't when they stopped pulling me down. It was when I stopped letting them.